Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen.
They say I'm a 35-year-old female in the process of going through an early intervention neurodevelopmental pathway with my 20-month-old son. Basically, he's been put on a diagnostic process due to strong indicators of autistic traits and a significant family history of autism in males of both mine and my husband's immediate family. During this process, a few of the healthcare professionals involved have suggested that I explore a diagnosis for myself. This is something that has been suggested to me by non-clinicians in the past, but it seems a little more validated now with everything that's occurring. The thing is, I'm not really sure what benefit there would be to getting a diagnosis now at 35 years old. I've had many challenges in life, especially with people, but I feel I've developed my coping strategies and adapted myself to the world accordingly. I'm not entirely thrilled with the idea of being officially autistic either, due to the preconceptions this comes with and the impact it may have on me professionally, as I'm quite a senior role. Worst case scenario for me is that I become more valuable as a diversity quota than as an individual contributor. However, my husband is very keen that I explore a diagnosis as he feels it will help me to understand myself better. And also if I might need therapy again in the future, then I can seek more tailored support. I guess it might help me be a better parent, ? Would that actually be the case? Has anyone had significant benefits to getting a late diagnosis? And that is what they wrote.
Yeah, that's a fascinating question. And also, first, let me start by saying how amazingly eloquent this writer was. I mean, beautiful writing. So, first of all, let me just say, as a diagnostician, when you get diagnosed, or if you see someone who gives you a diagnosis, that is protected information. So you do not need to share that with anyone. You can just hold on to that. And the professional also does not have the right or to share it without your permission. So, and that includes everyone, your health insurance, everyone. So that information can be just for your own sake. And yeah, I think if you go to, I completely understand the perspective of not wanting to become just another number in terms of diversity. I get that. And I think you're past the point of it benefiting you in terms of accommodations. Just reading the way that you're writing, I don't really think you need accommodations in your life. It sounds like you've had a very successful life. But I do think that it might be helpful in terms of if you have future questions or go into therapy or want to learn more about yourself, it might be helpful. I'm not sure if, first of all, your husband will feel like you've done something meaningful. That's good. But if you yourself feel that you might be on the spectrum, clearly it would be more kind of what we used to call Asperger's, which is extremely high functioning and slightly different than autism or ASD. And in terms of just wanting to gain some better understanding, I would suggest that, and also some tools for helping you in future struggles of life. I would suggest that you read information or books from Francesca Happy. Her last name is Happe. And she comes out of Cambridge, the University of Cambridge, and she did a lot of work with Simon Baron Cohen. Whenever I say that, everybody confuses that with Sacha Baron Cohen, the comedian. This is actually his cousin, and he's a scientist who teaches at Cambridge, and they talk a lot about some of the more cognitive areas associated with autism. And I would also suggest, in terms of tools that might be helpful in getting through life, I like the work of Tony Atwood, who writes a lot about, high functioning autism, Asperger's, and kind of how to what things you can do in life that will help you manage social situations and interact with people. So that's kind of my guidance. I think you should probably, just like anyone else, it's always good to have more insight into your own strengths and areas of difficulty. But as in terms of the diagnosis, that's a private decision. You don't have to share that with anyone.
Yeah, what an incredible thing to remember. Because I think we all feel like, well, if I get diagnosed, I need to make it everybody else's business. And you can. That's
Yeah.
certainly a choice, but it's also equally true that, that can be very private information that you don't share with other people. But I think you'll see, I really want to encourage you to watch tomorrow. I think you'll see the point of view of two women who did go get the diagnosis and what it did for them and how, that has helped them. I think this is a question that comes up a lot now. There have been a lot of things that have been in the forefront. You and I have actually talked about this before on the show, Dr. Grampiche, that, when somebody discloses that's in the public eye, or they see somebody who's going through something and it's not as stigmatized, then everybody goes, oh, perhaps that's me. I think that every single parent, I don't want to speak for everyone, but everybody that I've talked to said that when their child was diagnosed, they at least recognized themselves a little bit in the diagnosis. And then we all went, wait a second, so does that mean that I'm on the spectrum? I certainly asked that question. My husband certainly asked that question. But there is that spectrum. And we all have some of the traits that are listed on the, am I wrong, Dr. Grampiche?
No, that's exactly where I was going to go, Shannon, and thanks for bringing that up. So, we all have traits of some of these different, I guess, classifications of disorders, right? Uh, we all have, let's say, so not all, but some people are very, let's say, obsessive about things being a certain way. Others have difficulty with people getting too close to them. Others have sensory issues. Many of us nowadays have sensory dysregulation. We all have different aspects of it, or we might all have different aspects of not just autism, other mental issues as well. But the definition of what's classified as a disorder, and I don't like the word disorder, but that's what we call it, is basically that in order for something to be a disorder, it has to it has to result in you being dysfunctional in one of two environments, either your home social life or your work's educational life. And so, I always use the example of alcohol abuse or alcohol dependence as one example. You could drink a bottle of scotch every day, but as long as you are a functioning adult, go to work, your family's happy with you, nobody's having any kinds of issues, hey, maybe you just have really good redox and you wouldn't be classified. The classification of a disorder comes from not being able to manage in life. And so having some of the symptoms doesn't mean that you have the disorder. And that's really, really important. Like with autism, it is important to have the required number of symptoms within each area. And so that's the difference.
But I do want to say this, that, a lot of the things that people struggle with that lead them to say, I don't know, I might be on the spectrum, or I might have a sensory processing issue, that there are a lot of things that can be done to help those things.
Yeah.
And even as a 35-year-old adult, I think that sometimes just shining a light on something, I mean, perfect example, I love Dr. Stephen Shore. He identifies as being on the spectrum, and he is a wonderful professor at a esteemed university. But when he started working there, he said to them, I'm going to have, and this was years ago when maybe it was a lot less okay to be casual. He said, I'm going to have to wear a baseball hat when I lecture in my classroom, because you have fluorescent lights above, and the fluorescent lights, if they come down over my eyes, I can't concentrate. But if I wear a baseball hat, I'm fine. I'm good to go. And again, it was a time when that really wasn't acceptable. Professors
Mhm.
didn't wear baseball hats in lecture halls, but they said, sure, okay, do that. And then he was able to do his job. I think a lot of times if you didn't know that that's what your issue was, if you didn't know that that's what's bugging you out so that you can't concentrate, what would have been lost? Like
Yeah.
Stephen Shore and all that he's taught so many people over 2 decades would have been lost. So that awareness of himself and going, I can't do it when the visor isn't there and there's lights, that awareness allowed him to be successful in his life and to help other people. So I do think that shedding some light on stuff and going, oh, is that why I'm having a hard time with that? So what could I do to work around that? Or what could my partner do to work around that? I think that can be life-changing. And that's what I've heard from people.
Yeah, I agree with that, Shannon. I think you're absolutely right. I hear a little echo, that's why I'm stopping.
Yeah.
Um, I think that it's important if we need accommodations, that we are able to ask for those accommodations. There's no question about that. And that Stephen's example is a great example of an accommodation that is not such a big deal, and anyone should be able to allow that, right? And I think that is a very important part of this. So for this mom who has written in, if you feel that there are accommodations that you might need, and they would definitely be more acceptable once you have the diagnosis. But on the other side, there's a little bit of a stigma associated still with the diagnosis, believe it or not. And it's a very strange thing to me. Like, it's people have very little understanding of what ASD is. And so there's a very quick rush to judgment, as this mom noted. I mean, this past week I did a few talks for large national companies on diversity and acceptance and so on. And it's really, and a lot of the slides that I presented were asking people, hundreds of people on these presentations, just kind of stop for a moment and ask yourself, when someone says they have a diagnosis of autism, what is your immediate reaction? Like, do you immediately think they're incapable? Do you immediately think, oh God, like they're gonna do something strange? What are the things that people immediately jump to? And those are the problems. Those are the problems. And it will take a while for us to get everyone to understand that, or to value, I should say, the strengths of autism just as much as those areas that are different. I ended, I think, one of my talks with people with autism are different, but so are we. Everyone is different in one way or another, right? And if we can, it'll take a while before people stop thinking more of the negative stuff and start thinking, hey, by the way, also people with autism, some of them tend to have incredible memories, which are way better than the rest of us, that kind of stuff. So I can completely understand. And as you know, we have a lot of individuals who were children when I treated them, and they're now adults, and they don't want anyone to know. And I completely understand that, because they would rather not be grouped in some classification they don't feel they belong. It's tough because you don't know where you exactly belong. You want to belong in this group and in this group, and it's like it's difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a hard thing. I just want to the disclaimer though that I think that we can all be asking for things. You don't have to disclose. What I just was giving advice to a mom the other day about IEPs, and she was saying I get so overwhelmed in the IEP, and I said, "Oh, I learned a long time ago that if you read me something, I can't, and then ask me my opinion, I have a hard time. It takes me too long to process it. So I always ask in an IEP when it's important and I need to know, and they're going to read a report to me and then ask about my child and ask me if that's okay. It's never going to work for me. So I say to them, I don't process information, orally that way. Can I have it written, please? And I'm not disclosing a diagnosis or anything, but I'm advocating for myself and saying, here's what I need. And I used to think I wasn't allowed to do that. And now I see, I've learned from all kinds of people that if you need an accommodation, if you know yourself and you're like, it's not going to work that way for me, that you can ask, and especially if you ask in advance and you're compassionate about understanding what they need, then, that self-knowledge is can be a really good thing. But I totally agree that, Temple Grandin has said to us recently that her advice to professionals is to not disclose because of the current climate. And she said, I feel terrible saying that, but she said, I've seen too many stories where somebody disclosed who was already at a position in their work, and then everybody looked at them different. And she said, until we can get the rest of the world caught up, I'm just telling people, don't disclose. Hurt my heart. But I think she's right. In the interest of the individual, I think that it can be very difficult unless you're with the right employer.
I think she's right too, Shannon, because changing people's judgments takes a few generations. Like we look at, just think of, there are a lot of people still from an older generation who might judge someone based on their sexuality, for instance, right? So it's the same. It takes a while for people to become more open-minded and understanding of things. And we're not there yet with autism.
We aren't there yet. Thanks for watching Autism Live. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.